rise to a system of protection field. Please welcome Emma as she shed light on the fear in Loophole, how justice feels the innocent.
Good afternoon, everyone. At the beginning of my speech, I'd like to ask a question. Back to your childhood times, which emotion did you feel most instantly? Was it sadness, happiness, or anger? For me, there was an emotion that shadowed my entire 6 years of primary school. Fear, a helpless fear. I was fortunate that it never happened to me, but it still remains deeply etched in my memory. The fear begins in an afternoon during our Chinese class. A few rows ahead of me sat a girl, only 7 years old at that time, listening attentively to the teacher. Next to her sat a boy, leaned over. Then, his right hand, which had been resting casually on his own leg, slowly, tentatively, pressed against her thigh, touching her. She froze instantly and turning rigid, but she didn't say a word. He even became more and more presumptuous. When the teacher finally noticed and walked over, she saw the girl's flushed face and panicked eyes. And then she turned to the boy and said angrily, loud enough for the whole class to hear, "This is wrong. You mustn't do this again." However, the boy's expression remains a blank, or almost a bored expression. There was no punishment, no follow-up, not even a word of comfort for the victim. After that day, I saw the silent sexual harassment happening again and again in our school. But everything remains ordinary, even innocent. I was just a kid back then, not fully grasping what it all meant, but I can still sense that something was terribly wrong. And I felt a deep sense of injustice for that girl, but I didn't know what to do. I just believed that as I grew older, the world would become fairer and clearer. But it wasn't until many years later, when I accidentally watched a movie adapted from real events. An 8-year-old girl named Su Wang was brutally sexually assaulted by a drunk man on her way to school, suffering devastating psychological and physical trauma. With the support of her family members and the counselors, she struggled to emerge from the shadow of her ordeal. The perpetrator was deeply arrested, with DNA evidence proving his wrong without doubt. However, under the South Korean law at that time, intoxication could be considered a mitigating factor warranting a reduced sentence. And ultimately, the judge sentenced the perpetrator to only 12 years in prison. And in the reality, the perpetrator was released just as Su Wang turned 20. What terrified me most about the film wasn't the criminal's cruelty, but the suffer of pain suffered by the victims' families within the judicial process. And also the drunkenness mitigation clause and the stark reality that this monster would eventually walk free. The childhood in me suddenly returned, and I understood her fear back then. It wasn't merely a fear of a specific act, but the sudden realization that the rules and laws that we trusted to protect us might have enormous flaws. This flaw stems from multiple factors. It might be because of the judicial system's presumption of innocence, the harsh adherence to the procedural justice, or the unique nature of sexual harassment cases that prevent the male lawmakers of history from emphasizing with the feelings of female victims. Should these conditions change, we would usher in a world with greater gender equality and a world where all human rights are being protected. So we can feel fear, but we cannot stop at fear. When we talk about sexual harassment again, our question cannot stop at girls should be careful. We should turn to harder questions. Do our schools have enforceable and clear anti-sexual harassment policies? Does the judicial process prioritize protecting the victims, or does it torment them with harsh evidentiary requirements? And as lucky bystanders, can we rise above silence and learn to stop the inappropriate behaviors? And I want to share a statement from a book that I really love. Anyone who witnesses the violation of rights and feels anger or fear possesses a moral kindness. This emotion is a powerful resistance, the most beautiful and inspiring testimony born from the sense of justice. So if you guys feel uncomfortable or angry after hearing my speech, it means that you are kind and you should cherish those emotions and turn them into a more powerful counterattack. And changing the systems begins with demanding specifically. Let's transform our fear into demands, for we must make sure that our childhood selves, along with our children, present and future, believe that wrongdoings will be stopped and that those who commit evil will finally be punished by the law. Thank you.